not waste any conversation. Hello and welcome to episode 139 of OD and Chill. I'm Martin. I'm the SaaS Tech Director at Overdose in Australia. Today I'm lucky to be joined by Brad Austin, who's the Vice President of APAC and EMEA at Marketplacer. Before we get into it, just like to let you know we're streaming live on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. And I believe Marketplacer are also streaming this on some of their channels. So that's very exciting. I'm sure we'll be going out to an audience of millions today. So we better keep our language clean. If you have any questions or anything you'd like us to address, just drop them in the comments. Or if my questions aren't interesting enough, throw some more interesting questions in. And so I'm very excited about today's meet, stream, whatever we want to call it. So I'm used to being on a Zoom call, so I call it a call. I think marketplaces are still an untapped area in e-commerce for so many businesses, and it's a really exciting area. I think it lets people increase their product range without taking on extra inventory. It helps people expand into different markets. It helps add different product offerings to service-based businesses. Like I just started writing a bit of a list of some of the interesting stuff about marketplaces in general. And I've been lucky to work with the crew at Marketplacer quite a bit over the last couple of years. And so, I don't even know where to start, Brad. There's lots I want to cover off on today. So thanks so much for joining us.
A pleasure. It's great to be here. Happy Friday for everyone as well. So really happy to come in. As you pointed out, it's been a fun last 12 months or so, I think, really getting close to the Overdose team as well. So it's great to be able to have a chat on this Friday afternoon and talk about a subject that's obviously fairly close to my heart in all things marketplaces as well. So happy to be here.
Oh, fantastic. And before we I want to hear some stories and talk about different things that are happening all around the world at Marketplacer and just sort of trends in general. But I'd love to just hear a little bit about your story and your journey at Marketplacer.
Yeah, sure. So I'm now, I think it's just gone past 2 years at Marketplacer. So prior to that, I was running the Australian New Zealand Commerce Cloud business for Salesforce. Basically, I was over for about 4 years at Salesforce, and before that was with SAP and the Hybris business for about 5 years as well. So kicking around the Australian eCom tech space for the best part of a decade. The really exciting bit for me over the last 24 months has been kind of a bit of the opposite of my previous experience. So taking an Australian business and really looking at how we can expand that globally and really taking the best of Australian technology to international markets, as opposed to working with giant global organizations and bringing their technology to Australia. So it's been a really satisfying last 24 months. So a wild ride of late nights and early mornings, but it's been a really exciting and really rewarding last 24 months. And I think still the best quarters and best years are still ahead of us as well. I look after mostly the sales function, so out of Australia, New Zealand, and also have been very much behind our growth into the UK and Europe, and working closely with my counterparts in North America as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I guess that sort of segues. I was going to talk a bit later, but I'll jump into it now. Just like in terms of the growth into other areas, like tell us about some of the interesting businesses that you're starting to work with abroad.
Yeah, so for those that aren't massively familiar with Marketplacer, so as Martin mentioned at the start, so we're the tech that enables businesses to really incorporate third-party products into their offering to consumers. A lot of the customers that we work with are retailers that are looking to offer either dropship or range extension type offerings. But some of the really exciting things I've been working on have been around helping businesses that have an engaged community further monetize those communities as well. So not just geographic growth for us across the retail space, but also seeing some, some moves into some interesting new verticals, whether it's telco, transportation, media, a whole range of different areas that have engaged communities that are looking to move away from traditional ad-supported revenue models, moving into that focus around first-party transactional type relationships with their customers. So I think like all businesses, you come up with a business plan about how you're going to grow and what you're going to do and where you're going to go. And then markets, are really driving the outcomes of those. And to be fair, the outcomes of the last 18 months don't look anything like the plans that we wrote. We've been pulled in some interesting directions, both geographically as well as industry-wise. But yeah, big growth in areas like telco, big growth in loyalty programs, which has been really exciting to see. But I think our bread and butter is always going to be in B2C retail, really looking at businesses looking to take some of the sting out of their supply chain complexity and really focus on delivering innovative experiences to their customer base. The big areas on a global basis that we're seeing grow, grocery has been huge. I think we've always spent a lot of time with the Woolies group here out of Australia, which has been a long time customer of Marketplacer and seeing them grow the everyday market. But now seeing that being adopted by the biggest chains in North America, the biggest chains in Europe and the UK, has been really heartening at the same time, and really looking at how we're able to offer better value to consumers right now in a pretty tough retail environment has been it's been satisfying as much as it's been exciting.
Yeah, cool. And so, you talk about Woolworths, like you were saying, one thing when we were talking the other day is that, people think of it as a big organization like Woolworths being able to, sell with other big organizations and all become bigger and bigger. But it actually provides opportunities as well for a lot of smaller brands, you were saying, to actually start selling in a big marketplace like a Woolworths.
Yeah, look, it's exactly right. Look, one of the most exciting things for me about marketplaces and dropship programs and endless aisle in general is the fact that we're breaking down some of the barriers between the traditional relationships of suppliers and retailers. And what that does is it opens up more ability to create some interesting relationships and collaborative relationships where otherwise, they could be constrained by, wholesale fulfillment restrictions or others. But what we've seen, if we look at things like Woolies, to have the ability to list exciting Australian brands like Myers, for example, on their marketplace in advance of them being ranged through their other channels, just creates this really cool opportunity for customers to win, for small brands to be introduced into much larger audiences as well. And at the same time, to have these big retail leaders be able to offer innovative, dynamic product ranges that is trend-based, that's able to then service the ever-changing, ever-accelerating customer expectations. We've seen that in lots of different ways, and I've seen it both. Woolies is a great example of it as well. But the other locally is working closely with the Qantas folks, and the majority of Australians have had something to do with Qantas at some point. But really looking to create a great loyalty experience has been a backbone of their growth strategy for quite some time. And creating relationships with great Australian brands and creating this real Australian identity behind their loyalty store has been a really exciting initiative to be part of. So it's not just working with big retailers in providing things like TVs and white goods and others, which a lot of folks spend their points on, but creating an opportunity to spotlight Australian designers and Australian manufacturers to really kind of get behind that spirit of Australia type branding has been a really fun process to sort of see from idea through to now being a really high growth business and a high growth a revenue driver for an organization like Qantas has been really cool. And that just by changing that old sort of dynamic or evolving, it does open up the opportunity for brands and retailers to collaborate in whole new ways, which has been very exciting.
Yeah, and I think there's so many interesting things to take out of the Qantas setup, isn't there? Like the stuff you're saying about it being able to tie with the right brands. It's not just a matter of building a marketplace store that just all of a sudden has a million products that people can purchase and tie it into their frequent flyer points. It really is a brand extension and something that, businesses can tee up with similar brands as something to build on their brand, not just a way to try and increase their average order value and get more money coming through their till.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Look, it's one of the, actually this was called out by Phil Reed. I think it was last week, the week before, we were at the online retailer conference, and he was talking about their journey at the DOM. And one of the things that he mentioned was about, you're really early on in the process, being clear around what their identity was going to be and being very intentional about the suppliers and products that they choose to range, really focusing on curation as kind of a key to that strategy. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot when customers are thinking about the idea of incorporating third-party products is, how much room is there in the Australian market for just another marketplace? Which is a great question. I think it's one that is an understandable question, and I think it's an important time to then break out what is a mega marketplace, what is this kind of aggregator of products. If you think about eBay and Catch and Amazon, where they're really looking at having everything, that's what we really look at as a mega marketplace. Where marketplace tends to play, and the customers that we work with are really looking to create unique experiences and stay true to the identity of the brand that they've spent so much time and money and often just generations of building. And so that means that curation of sellers, curation of products is really critical in maintaining that brand. So what I guess kind of compare it to, and as I mentioned at Tom, I've been in the ecom space for a long time, and remember many conversations, actually I wish they were further long ago than they were, but conversations with retailers that have very strong store footprints, asking about how relevant ecom is to their business. And it was an offshoot, it was an idea for a lot of some of Australia's most successful online retailers now. If we go back 5 or 6 years, there was still tussle between channels. It was, our stores are incredibly successful. Do we want to cannibalize it by putting our products online? I think about marketplaces in the same way, which is, not too long ago, it was a separated initiative. The marketplace is over there. This is our .com. They're separate initiatives. Whereas what we've seen kind of evolve through that time is very similar to the evolution of e-commerce in general, which is, it's becoming a ubiquitous part of a digital strategy and an overall customer engagement strategy, where we're seeing these things blur. So between marketplace products now being available for click and collect, we're looking at endless aisle in stores, looking at seasonal collaborations that are part of an overall merchandising strategy. And so for me, when I look at, is there enough room for more and more marketplaces? I don't think that's what we're really driving towards. But ideally for us to be able to see that incorporating third-party products should just become another string in the bow for savvy digital businesses and savvy retailers. That's something that I think is going to start to become much more commonplace and a fundamental part of many, not just retail, but any customer-obsessed, customer-oriented businesses, just like we saw with ecom through its evolution over the last few years as well.
Yeah, and I think you can't in terms of you're not going to have too many more Kogans pop up these days, but you've got the opportunity. There's so many businesses that are mature online businesses and not necessarily e-com businesses where they're sort of service. They've got an online service, I think of a car sales, for example, or businesses in that sort of vertical where they've built these huge offerings and they're quite they've got a huge database. And also finding on the flip side, you've got things like your Meta and your Google advertising gets harder to get the return on investment. So businesses are looking for things to do with their database. And so having, pairing up with similar brands that have products and being able to extend your offering and in some cases, not necessarily e-com businesses, but businesses that, are digital businesses with a different type of model. It's a great way to add that retail offering in and try new product ranges. And I think there's definitely a lot of room for experimentation and innovation, I think, in the marketplace area, because there's not there's a lot of different paths that people can be taking.
There definitely is. Look, I think Yeah, the last 10 days, especially in Australia, we've seen some pretty disheartening retail figures, both the end of last week, earlier this week. It's hard for retailers out there, and at the same time, we're looking at increases in cost of customer acquisition. We're looking at complexity of supply chains. You've got those two sides that are coming together at a time where there is less available disposable income for retail spending. And so one of the things again that we lean into with this idea of collaborative commerce, it's also about being able to effectively split the two most expensive parts of the customer journey. So in terms of the product creation, the distribution of products, the manufacture, from the cost of acquiring and servicing a customer. And businesses aren't always the best at both. It's sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But some are great at acquiring a customer and building a brand and developing an experience and servicing customers. And others are just fantastic at sourcing amazing product, being able to access huge amounts of data to make decisions around what products are going to be required and what are going to be in demand products. I spoke last week with Steph from New Aim, and this is one of the largest sellers across a huge number of marketplaces in Australia. And she mentioned just the sheer volume of data that they have around Australian consumers. What are they buying? What are they likely to be buying? And your smaller retailers and other brands don't have access to that sort of breadth of data. So what we're really looking to do through this process is be able to bring together those companies that are great at acquiring and servicing customers. They've got a strong brand, an engaged community. You mentioned car sales, great example. With those companies and those organizations that are great at sourcing and distributing products that are in demand. And so at the same time that we're all looking to sell more things, you're also then being able to share in the costs associated with acquiring and servicing those customers too. So it's a bit of a situation where we're kind of bringing the best of both worlds together. And ideally, at the end of the day, if the customer doesn't win, they're not going to come back. They're not going to justify the spend. They're not going to justify the investment. But I think at a time now where there is more competition for eyeballs, more competition for consumers' dollars, being able to collaborate with other parties using technology, and sometimes collaborating with competitors is really cool to see. When you start to see brands that are working together with a common goal of kind of servicing customers and better serving unique customer expectations. It's a pretty exciting development in this world as well, or in the eCom space for us. So yeah, it's been cool to see some of those barriers blur and seeing collaborations really drive some pretty cool initiatives in stuff that we wouldn't have imagined before. So yeah, car sales is a good example. It's cool to see that kind of all come together.
It's really, and the collaboration thing's really important too. I think it's not a white label solution where you're finding a retailer that can sell your products or find a drop shipping warehouse in China. It's really different to that model, isn't it? Like, it's actually about being the best of both businesses that are involved in the partnership, isn't it? And if you've got if you're a brand that's like, running an e-com operation with products coming in from a marketplace, we see it's actually people like to elevate both brands as part of doing that and say, hey, great, this is coming from a top retailer. It's not just you're ordering this product and we're shipping it out of China. You're going to get good customer service. You're going to you can do returns. The click and collect piece is something really interesting as well. And I think also you end up with a shared database. Really, it's not about just making sure you get all the data. It's about you. It's got to be something you've got to let go a little bit and share, because then both parties will be driven by the success of it and can evolve.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And it's also not something that is flicking a switch. Like I've seen it too. I think I've seen a couple of TikToks and social videos that talk about just jumping on and getting a dropship relationship and forming your own brand. What we lean into is a continual investment in these relationships. So when you're looking at the best examples of brands that have incorporated third-party products, they develop super close, symbiotic relationships with their chosen sellers right from the outset, from recruiting those that reflect your values. So it's clear now that consumers value sustainability. They value transparency in the supply chain. It's obviously huge at the moment, making sure there's visibility across manufacture, whether it is modern slavery protections, it is ecological sustainability. These issues are critical. And once you start incorporating the products of a third party, they are now an extension of your brand. They're the custodians of the last mile, which we know is such a pivotal part in creating lasting repeat relationships. So it's multi-stage. So from selecting the right partners to get started with is critical, making sure they align with your brand values, making sure they can meet the expectations that your customers have right from the outset. And that comes in through, tech is just one piece. That's, as much as I might be selling ourselves short, that's kind of the easy piece. It's they've also got to solve for that bit, but it's making sure that you can align on values and expectations with those sellers. Then there's the tech piece, the actually how we start to make sure that the pipes are all connected in the right place to make sure that brands and those retailers offering their products make it easy to work with each other. How are you taking the pain out of mapping products, incorporating and ingesting products, in fulfilling orders, communicating to customers, all that sort of stuff. And then there's just the constant evolution and optimization of those relationships, feeding data back, giving insights, what products are selling, what do click-through rates look like, where are these abandonments, where are the abandonment and customer journeys, and what's the role that these particular sellers' products are playing in that journey. And what it can mean is that it's not a 3-month program, it's not a 6-month program. If we look at some of the customers, whether it's Myer or Woolies, they're 5 and 6 years on their journey through this process as well. And what makes it successful is constantly feeding back that data to suppliers and creating an environment where you are mutually sharing and optimizing the relationship over time. So yeah, it's certainly not a set and forget type arrangement. There's effort at every stage of the process. So it's you really need to get buy-in from lots of different stakeholders in both organizations to ensure that collaboration continues beyond just flicking a site live and taking the first few orders.
Yeah, for sure. And so can you tell me a little bit, like I'd love to just sort of tap into like what is the engagement process? So if I'm a retailer that wants to start selling via marketplaces, how do they engage with someone like a marketplacer and sort of what does that early part of the journey look like?
Yeah, look, there's obviously working directly with marketplace. You can find us, jump onto LinkedIn, reach out to me, jump onto our pages. But one of the areas that's really been the backbone of our success and growth is obviously working with great partners like Overdose at the same time. I know I think I've spent a bit of the last sort of 20 minutes talking about how easy and great marketplace and dropship and these sorts of options are. It's hard, and it takes organizational change and organizational alignment to make sure that it's a successful program. So if you think about, it's a different revenue model, it's a different supply chain model, there's merchandising impacts, there's digital impacts, there's a whole range. So one of the first questions that we really look to answer is around the maturity of the organization to embrace that kind of change. And so depending on where that is, we certainly suggest a few different paths. So whether it is really leaning into an overall digital strategy, what's the end-to-end customer journey that you're looking to drive, and leveraging partners with expertise to drive that end-to-end, such as Overdose, for example. And other ends, we end up with these amazing and mature organizations that have, they've been running dropship for a long time, and that's something that that I guess I try and get into customers and to our ecosystem, which is what we're talking about here. It's not new. Marketplace is not new. Dropship's not new. It's in a lot of cases it's older than a lot of ecom areas. B2B businesses have been doing dropship for 15 years, 20 years. Like it's a tried and tested kind of offering. But what we're really looking to do with it is make it accessible and look to a point where we're leveraging digital leaders to help take the complexity out of that. So for us, in terms of engaging, it really depends on where customers are at, what they want to achieve. But we'd encourage, lean into the expertise that we have at Marketplacer. We've been here for a long time. Prior to being a technology organization, we owned and ran many different marketplaces. So there's a lot of IP that exists in the team here, and it's available for our customers to bounce ideas off. And especially over the last the last 18 to 24 months, that expertise is now filtering out into a great ecosystem of both implementation partners, e-commerce technology partners, channel partners that are responsible for bringing a lot of products in, folks like Omnivore and Commerce, Channel Engine. These guys have a huge amount of expertise. So whether it's with Marketplace or whether it's one of our competitors, one of the SIs, if it is of interest, we'd certainly encourage to reach out through any of those channels, and happy to invest some time in understanding how the vision and the technology can come together, because I think that's obviously a critical part. But yeah, certainly happy to engage directly with anybody via Marketplace or any of the other channels as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things you touched on a little bit there, I think like the selling in of marketplace, and I say marketplace, or I should be saying marketplaces, because it is a generic conversation, but I think building that business case and selling the vision of it is a really important thing, particularly with, as you say, because you generally got lots of stakeholders involved. You've got the business that's decided they want to set up a marketplace. Then you've got you're going to have to start pulling in vendors. Then you've also got to decide which platform, whether it is marketplace or something else, that is going to be sort of the conduit in the middle. Then you've got your eCom platforms, and it could be that what your business is on one platform and then your vendors are on other platforms. So there's a lot to pull in there. And I think building out a game plan to start with is the thing that probably makes or breaks it. And I think I say it can change it from being a 3 to 6 month project to get up and running, which is the nimbleness, I guess, that more those maturing startup type businesses have, right up to the really big organizations where there can be a bit more red tape to get through, and it's harder to I guess bend existing process to what you need to do to adopt this model. And I find that one of the really interesting things when we do work on projects together is sort of going through that and working out where are the bits that we can just make it happen, and where are the bits where we need to find a bit of flex, and then where are the bits where we need to fill legitimate gaps in business requirements. And that's where it is a really interesting conversation from day one, and it's really a really big change management process if you're adopting this model for the first time.
It is, absolutely. And look, if I think about some of the most successful programs that we've been able to be a part of, it's when some of the common characteristics of those successful programs are where you have champions from multiple business units and leaders from the finance teams that are able to look at, okay, well, what's the difference between marketplace revenue and first party product revenue? How do we deal with a commission-based revenue program? Do we look at dropship where we manage pricing? Do we want to manage the pricing ourselves in a traditional dropship model? Do we want to go into marketplaces? Who wants to be the custodian of customer service? Do we want to take all of the conversations ourselves? Do we want to pass those to our sellers? Do we want to take the transaction? Do we want to hold it in escrow and be able to pass it back? That's kind of some European legislation that we'll likely see here in the not too distant future. But there's also legal considerations, there's branding considerations in a lot of areas. There's also there's competitive and or non-competitive legislation around being able to offer third-party and first-party products next to each other. There's lots of decisions that need to be made that really benefit from having the input of lots of different stakeholders in an organization. And when you do manage to very early on in the process, get those business stakeholders really lined up behind what you want to achieve, the technology piece can figure itself out, but it's those business decisions around, right, what's the model we're going to go with? What are we looking to put in front of our customers? And that then feeds into the business case at the same time. How are we really looking at targeting selling more of our first party products? How are we looking? Are we going to tap into a new audience? Are we looking to better service the audience that we have? And a lot of those fundamental questions are ones that we certainly encourage prospective customers to really ask of themselves and really bring their colleagues to the table to discuss fairly early on in the process. And if we look at the buying group for any big technology change, and there's lots of data on this, you can jump into a whole bunch of different data sources, but they have been getting bigger groups. You're looking at so many stakeholders. If we look back 5-10 years, there was a small group that we were responsible for buying technology in particular areas. It's only growing larger, which means there are more voices, there are more opinions, there are more. So it is critical to make sure that you've got the support of the senior executive and particularly those functional areas that are going to have critical roles. It's not a digital project. It's not a finance project. It's not a supply chain project, but it absolutely impacts all three in fundamental ways. So it's certainly something that we encourage everybody to be aware of when considering embracing these kind of options. It's get everyone on board. It's going to make it much easier and much faster to get through the process and get those products in front of your consumers.
Yeah, and I think the need to be able to evolve quickly as well, I think, and finding that balance between getting things locked in for launching, but also being able to move fast and evolve and change after you're up and running. I think that's critical to the success of this model. And you need, without doing that, you're not going to you're not going to get the project off the ground in many cases, and also you don't know where your success is going to exactly lie. So I think it's really about finding that fine balance, isn't it? Where having a really strong strategy, but also know that you might be burning half of it down and changing tact within a few months of being up and running with it.
Yeah, and hopefully it enables you to then use data to make some of those decisions as well. So being able to inform decisions around what sellers you choose to work with, being able to stay close to how things are evolving over time. Is important. I think early on in this chat you spoke about retailers looking at experimentation and trying new things and others. One of the great things about adopting, whether it's either a dropship or marketplace, adopting this model is that if there are sellers and products that aren't resonating with your customers, that are a challenge, it's not a process to turn it off. It's a very simple process to be able to remove those sellers, remove those products. Based around live data, based around trends that you're seeing in market through the other sources of insights that you have, and then being able to pivot based on what is going to appeal to customers in any given moment or any given time. And the last 36 months of going through COVID, post-COVID, a focus on travel, a focus on sustainability, a focus on value has meant what consumers are looking for is only changing faster and faster. So being able to experiment, use data, use the tools to then inform what you then double down on is a really great asset for many different parts of retail businesses these days.
Yeah, and that easy in, easy out, like being able to experiment with a new product range without ending up with a warehouse full of product that you've got no avenue to sell is obviously very, very valuable.
It's the other side, absolutely, and it's the other side of that too. Like where I tend, I'm guilty of it as well, in falling into talking a lot about just the operators of marketplaces, like how you can incorporate third-party products, because that's where we spend a lot of our time. But obviously, the other side of that equation is sellers. So you've got your own Shopify site, you've got your own BigCommerce site where you're selling direct to consumers. But there are now so many more channels that are available for you to put those products in front of consumers. We mentioned Woolies and Qantas, but there's a whole range of different suppliers now. The previous media organizations, you mentioned car sales as well, and on an international basis, there's a whole range of emerging channels that are now available for brands looking to tap into those communities to sell their products. So I think it is about creating those channels. And then I think there's also a process around if you are a direct-to-consumer brand, if you've got your own site, being able to constantly look at what are the new routes to market, what are the new options that I can explore to put my products in front of. And the same rings true if those using data, if those channels are not producing, try another one, turn it off, experiment, and being able to look at what are some interesting collaborations that you might be able to come up with when you don't have to worry about negotiating wholesale contracts or worried about channel conflict or even pricing conflict. Like it's one of those things that you can still be the custodian of the landed price and all these other areas that mean you can put your products in new and innovative places without huge costs in advance of it too. And lots of partners are helping to do that really, really easily as well these days.
Yeah, great. I should just housekeeping thing. Just if anyone has any questions, there's boxes, whatever platform you're on, to start typing them in. So I would love to take any questions as they come in. I just wanted to. We've talked about all the name dropped a few of the big brands that work with Marketplacer, but the most important one that I wanted to talk about, you've got a partnership with P. Diddy, I believe, and I believe you've got a direct relationship with P. Diddy as a result of that.
Exactly. We're planning joint family vacations at the moment. I wish that was true, and so does 14-year-old Brad. But yeah, it's been a really exciting initiative to be a part of. So Sean Combs, so P. Diddy, has launched the Empower Global Marketplace. So it's a marketplace that's really been designed to put a spotlight on Black-owned brands and designers, really with the goal of creating a larger platform to put those products in front of new audiences and create a community that really champions the products and services that are being offered by Black-owned businesses out of the US. And it's been exciting to see it come together, and it's something that has been, I guess, the backbone of lots of new marketplaces, which is finding an identity and particularly a social cause as well, and now being able to bring both sides of that equation together, from championing these great brands to then creating alignment with those brands for consumers. So we're seeing it obviously in Empower Global, which is very, very cool, and obviously my degrees of separation being dramatically reduced between me and one of my early idols in the music industry. Yeah. But we're also seeing it across a lot of other social enterprises as well. So, not necessarily Marketplacer customers, but across Australia, there's lots of sustainable oriented marketplaces that are now creating an avenue for things like food waste. So again, this is one of the keynotes at Online Retailer recently. Was Jamie from Too Good To Go. They've created a global marketplace to reduce food waste. So being able to just create an avenue to keep food out of landfill, to service communities that want access to a whole range of food products that otherwise would go to waste, has been awesome. Where we work with actually one of the largest kind of media groups in Europe, the Schibsted Group out of Norway. They've recently launched a refurbished mobile phone and reconditioned electronics marketplace, again, really with the goal of keeping these products out of landfill, giving them a new life, putting them in front of customers that are already engaging with their media properties and their classified properties, really in a bid to save these products from being thrown out and give them another life. And there's so many variations on that when it comes to sustainable fashion in Australia, abroad. And I think the concept of marketplaces where you have this community that comes together for a specific reason is really something that is only going to continue to grow. And I think that's something that's pretty unique about that right now. So yeah, I think we're going to see more and more pop up around communities at the same time. Sorry, my sick 4-year-old with a sniffle is after something. I'll come and get you in a minute. Just give me a minute. Okay, go for it. You can have some cheese. Go for it. All right, we've solved the cheese issue, so we're back on. But yeah, it's been exciting to see so many fun marketplaces spring up, but also with a really great social outcome at the same time.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. You can see how that starts to bring together new brands and new, like, as much as it's wonderful when it does have a sustainable theme or a inclusion theme and that sort of thing. But it also, from a business perspective, you can just see something that, like, so to go back to the theme of drop shipping, it's really taking that to the level where it's actually not just about a transactional relationship. It is about building brands in their own right that are not necessarily around just one product and one team of people.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think there's so many routes to market for new brands as well. So I think if you've got a really established direct to consumer channel already, we're looking at how you can grow that further. Actually, it was listening to the founder of Muscle Nation recently as well, and he was talking about his marketplace journey, which may sound counterintuitive for me to bring it up, but he was talking about that being their start. So they looked at marketplaces as a way to get their brand out there in the first place, And then now that they've developed a reputation, they've developed a really strong following through those channels, they've now looked to really double down on their own direct-to-consumer channels and put more weight behind that with the audience that they've established. So it's not doesn't have to be permanent, and it's not always one direction. So we're not saying that once you're a marketplace, that's what you're going to be forever. Once you're selling on marketplaces, that's where you're going to be forever. The exciting thing about this business model in general is that it is able to be flexible and agile based on what is really right for both your customers and your business at any given time. And that's obviously something that's going to continue to change as trends change as well.
And it's inevitable, isn't it? You're not gonna, like people are always looking to improve their margin, and so if you're successful selling someone else's product, well, that's the obvious thing, that you're going to start selling your own. I think you look at the Nike story. Nike was started off by Phil Knight selling Tiger shoes out of the back of his car, and then once supply chain couldn't keep up, they kind of went and did depending on the interpretation of the story, went and did it their own way and started making their own stuff. So it's an inevitable part of business, and there's such a there's so many different journeys, and it's lots of different ways. Like it's quite hard really to tap into what the one use case is for marketplace, because there's an infinite number. We've got a question. Thanks, Simon. What's a challenging merchant requirement that you've encountered that Marketplacer has been able to solve?
Look, there's obviously plenty that are in there, but one of them that springs to mind to me, which is fairly real in the last couple of years as well. We work closely with Barbecues Galore, and I think the challenge statement that they had at the start of the process was, we sell barbecues, and we sell great barbecues. They're dominant in that category across Australia, which is such a fundamental part of our culture and lifestyle. But it's a considered purchase, and one with a really strong. It's a long lifetime. You buy a barbecue, it sits at the back for 5 or 6 years. If you're close to the coast, you get rust holes in about 6. Outside of that, you've got a really long life cycle and a long gap in between purchase frequency. And so the challenge that they really looked at is, how do we get customers coming back in between those purchases? How do we stay true to our identity, but we're increasing the frequency of purchase? And they really adopted an initial strategy around adjacencies. So when you're standing at a barbecue and you look around a 360-degree view, I want to be able to have that experience when I walk into a Barbecues Galore store or jump onto the .com.au site as well. How do I get that full experience? And so what we really worked with them on is how to create a curated range of adjacent categories that can bring customers back more frequently. And they've really looked to expand upon that concept since then as well. So in terms of the merchant challenge for them that marketplaces are specifically solving, that was around frequency of purchase. It was just, you have a large considered product, but you want to keep an engaged consumer. You want them coming back more frequently to engage with your brand and continue to look to add to the relationship that they've formed with those consumers as well. And that was a fun one to be able to look at. And I think now you jump onto Barbecue site, they've used data to drive into a whole range of cool categories, which are really around servicing that back deck and supporting the Australian outdoor lifestyle when it comes to entertaining as well. So it was a challenge for them that really was fairly uniquely solved by incorporating third-party products. They had no interest in adding more floor space in expensive stores or adding more space in their warehouses, but at the same time wanted to increase the offering that they had to consumers as well. So I think it was a cool example of how to increase frequency of purchase without adding complexity to supply chain or increasing cost of store footprints and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. And I guess I'd love to. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but have you got any examples of a quirky example where something that sounded like marketplace wouldn't be a good fit, or a strange collaboration between different types of products that has got off the ground and surprised you?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there's lots that are surprising in that sense, but one of the ones that's been that I thought was kind of fun as well is a customer that's worked with us for a fair bit of time in Surf Stitch. If you've seen it, they're a great business offering lifestyle products at the same time, or really apparel around the surf coastal lifestyle. Has been their bread and butter, and after incorporating third-party sales strategy, really to look at board sports, really look at how they can incorporate surfboards and a bunch of other big and bulky things was kind of the goal. But what we saw them move into was much more of the health and beauty type categories as well that were true to their consumers. I think one of those you're fairly on in the process hearing from Justin that was talking about it was just that surfers like to look after their skin as well. And so being able to see them really have these growth categories around skincare when traditionally it was selling, skate and surf apparel, was really cool at the time. And I think that goes back a couple of years, but it sort of opened up our eyes in the way that we're thinking about using customer demographics to drive some of these range-based decisions. So it's been pretty cool to see that in a range of different areas that are things that you may not have started out planning to range, that you can experiment with and start to see a lot of uptick in, and then start to form that into a part of your offering and really move from your one category into broadening into much more of a lifestyle around that category as well, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess was starting to sort of wind up. I'd sort of to plug what I do a little bit, because I always work in the SaaS and sort of Shopify ecosystem corner of the room, like the ability for brands, like you mentioned skincare, and I think of all the skincare retailers we've worked with over the years, and how, if you're on a platform like Shopify, you've got the most, I guess, almost the most standard data feed in the world at your disposal now, and the ability to get into merchants into brands through a platform like Marketplace, it really is easy now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Look, that's it's our reason for being is to make this process easy. So the decisions around what products to range, how to execute on it, like they are solely the decisions of great digital merchants and great retailers and great brands. Our job is to make the plumbing easier and to make those decisions business decisions rather than technical decisions. Commerce platforms like BigCommerce, like Shopify, that have created this accessible ecosystem and this collaborative ecosystem around merchants has really been a fundamental part of enabling what we do as well. So we work very closely with both of those platforms, as well as Salesforce and Commerce Tools and Adobe and the other key players in this space, to make sure that we're enabling these strategies to be easily adopted, easily used, easily expanded, and at the same time empowering folks like Overdose to really bring their expertise in digital experience, not just to retailers. We've spent a lot of time speaking about that as well. We've dabbled in a few others, but there's some exciting projects that hopefully we'll be making a big deal about soon. With Overdose as well, looking at traditional businesses in the healthcare space that have really been able to now take advantage of the accessibility of this kind of technology from e-commerce, from Marketplace, to really start driving some exciting opportunities. I think we just had actually a site go live, I think it was yesterday, out of the United States with Shopify as well, around a children's hospital, which is just creating a really great experience for folks in a really challenging set of circumstances. And the accessibility of great e-commerce technology like BigCommerce, Shopify, and others has really made that possible and made it scalable for a whole range of different businesses to embrace not just this business model, but embrace really great digital experiences as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And like every time I talk to someone from Marketplace, like I sound like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much, but I do hear different stories and interesting stories. And I feel like I could talk about it all day. And I think hopefully it's sort of, I hope this conversation has maybe sparked the imagination of some people in terms of ways that they could use marketplaces that they weren't maybe thinking about. And just got a question come through from Raven here. So, what's the general trigger for a merchant to seriously start to consider expanding through connecting or integrating a marketplace?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would love for there to be a general trigger, because then we can predict it. And as a sales business, it'd be great. It's that thing. But one of the things that I've found to be most exciting about this space is that those triggers look different for everybody. So from businesses that have had challenges sourcing products that want to be able to source from multiple regions, right through to challenges to business models. So touched on it quickly, but seeing the legislative changes around how we deal with first-party data in traditional ad-supported revenue models. It's a bit of a looming spectre. It's a challenge with things like GDPR and others. So we've seen media organizations on a global level, whether it's broadcasters, traditional publishers, social media type organizations, really looking at leveraging the marketplace model, because they're then getting access to that first party transactional data. They know where customers live. They've got to ship it. They know whether they buy a product that is on sale, whether they have just a love of a brand, or whether they're going to be a consumer. And they get this really, really rich, valuable first-party data as well. And we've seen that as a big trigger. So, challenges to business models and opportunities. And the others that we see are driven by revenue at the same time, which I know is a simplistic view. But at the end of the day, returning value back to your businesses and returning value back to shareholders, it's about driving sustainable growth. And so being able to look at a predictable commission-based revenue line item is certainly attractive to CFOs at the moment. I'll just kind of bore people for 30 seconds on what that means. But if we look at a traditional revenue model, you're incorporating the cost of goods sold for an entire product, and you're looking at a margin off the back of that. When we look at a commission-based revenue model where we're selling a product, where we're taking the full value of that transaction, but really the recognizable part of that transaction is a commission-based product, which effectively means that it's a 100% gross margin product. So as much as it's a low value product, that 15 to 20% commission that's retained, it does have a big impact on profit margin and on ability to return quick value to retailers they're in a tough space. So we've seen those two as being, I suppose, negative forces, I guess. And the other is just opportunity, the ability to really monetize and capitalize on an audience that you have, that you've already acquired, and to be able to better serve that community, whether it's a social community, an interest community, whatever it happens to be. And I think those are some of the key triggers that we see across the board. And then within those, they come from a range of different departments: digital teams that are stretched, finance teams that need to show a return, operations teams that are under the pump, a whole range of different areas within that. But yeah, I'd love for there to be one. It would make my job and my team's job a lot easier. But it's exciting when each of those triggers are different. And hopefully there's a bunch of new and exciting ones we haven't seen yet either.
No, and it's even just like the number of different stakeholders that you have in different, there's not one. It's not the eCom manager. It's not sometimes it's driven from CEOs. Sometimes it's driven from someone in finance wanting to do it. It's it's what keeps it interesting though, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's
with the board.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully there's more of it too. Obviously, if there's any other excited CFOs or eCom leaders out there that want to chat about it, reach out and it'd be great to have a chat at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, that might be a good note to wrap it up on. And obviously either of us love talking about this stuff, and look forward to working together on lots more projects. I know we've got a few in the pipeline already, and I think we're just going to see more and more people starting to make it just part of their everyday, having marketplaces as part of their business. So
I certainly think so. Look, that's kind of my long-term goal, is just for marketplaces rather to be a massive strategic initiative, at the same time to just become another tool available to businesses to bring agility and growth to their organizations as well. But it's been fun having a chat. Look forward to spending more time with the Overdose crew as we continue to scale both here and overseas as well.
Absolutely, and good to see a couple of cameo appearances in the background there.
I've just been feeding her slice of cheese. So I think she's all taken care of now. That's the currency of 4-year-olds these days, clearly.
Yeah, I was lucky to have an empty house for this one today. It's normally with that in the background while Bluey does the babysitting. So, yeah,
exactly.
But no, thank you so much, Brad, and thanks everyone who's tuned in. I hope you've found this to be interesting. I know I have, at least. So that's at least one person that's really enjoyed it. So
I'll take it.
Yeah, no, but yeah, thanks everyone, and yeah, have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everyone.